Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. I thought my marriage was rebuilding after counseling. Then I found my journal with pages ripped out. My husband's mother smiled. You should be more careful where you leave your pain. That week, I was served a court order claiming I was emotionally abusive, with my own words as evidence. I checked my backup cloud and found a voice note recorded in my therapist's office without consent that was sent from his sister's device, because I never thought I'd be the woman who got played like this. My name's Erin. I'm 35, and I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina my whole life. My husband Gavin and I have been together since I was 26. We met at a summer cookout, and back then I thought I hit the jackpot. He was charming, funny, the kind of guy who always had a beer in his hand and a story to tell. My parents liked him, my friends liked him. I fell for him hard. For the first few years it was good. We bought a little house in West Ashley, got a dog, settled into life. But slowly things shifted. Gavin started working late more. He'd snap at me over stupid things like how I folded the towels or how I cooked his eggs. He'd make little comments about my weight, my hair, the way I laughed. And every time I tried to talk about it, he'd say I was too sensitive or reading into things. When I brought up counseling, he acted like I was asking him to cut off his arm, but after one really bad fight, he threw a glass at the wall and it shattered everywhere. He finally agreed. We started seeing Dr. Naomi, Alyssa Dr. Naomi, a therapist with an office near downtown. At first it felt like we were getting somewhere. We were both opening up, and I thought maybe this was a fresh start. I even started keeping a journal again, something I hadn't done since college. It helped me sort through everything, all the anger and sadness I didn't know how to say out loud. I kept that journal in my nightstand under a stack of old magazines. I thought it was safe. One afternoon, I was getting ready for a family dinner at Gavin's parents' house. I opened the Dr. Naomi drawer to grab a pen, and I noticed my journal felt lighter. I flipped through it and my heart sank. Pages were missing. Whole sections ripped out, the pages where I wrote about the worst nights, the fights, the things I was too ashamed to tell anyone. I felt sick. At dinner, Gavin's mom Margot was watching me like a hawk. She always acted like she was better than me. Always passive-aggressive comments, always judging. As I reached for the bread basket, she leaned in close and said, "You should be more careful where you leave your pain." Her voice was like poison in my ear. I couldn't eat. I just sat there gripping my fork so hard my knuckles went white, my stomach twisting. 2 days later, a man knocked on my door. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a court order. Gavin was filing for a protective order against me. He claimed I was emotionally abusive, and the evidence, photocopies of the ripped-out pages from my journal. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. They'd twisted my words, things I wrote in moments of pain and frustration, into a case against me. Sentences highlighted, circled, and read like I was a threat. And that wasn't all. I kept thinking about counseling. Some of the phrases in the court papers were exactly what I said in Dr. Naomi's office, word for word. That couldn't be a coincidence, so I went into my iCloud backup, something I barely used just to check. And there it was, a folder I didn't recognize titled Recordings. My hands were shaking when I clicked it open. There was a voice note. I pressed play and there was my voice. My voice from a therapy session. I was talking about how Gavin made me feel small, how I felt like I was losing myself. It was sent from an Apple ID I didn't recognize at first. Then it clicked. Lila, Gavin's sister. I remembered that night weeks back. We were at a family dinner, and I saw Lila scrolling on her phone, acting like she wasn't paying attention. I didn't think much of it, but that was when she must have sent the recording. I sat there stunned, listening to my own words twisted into a weapon. I confronted Gavin that night. He sat there stone-faced like I was the crazy one. "Why?" I asked him. My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. He just looked at me and said, "You were making things toxic. We had to protect ourselves." That word, "we," made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut. It wasn't just him. It was his mother, his sister. They'd been plotting behind my back, recording me in therapy, stealing my journal, building a case to make me look unstable, like the abuser. They were going to ruin me, take everything. But they didn't know who they were messing with. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I tried to focus, tried to figure out my next move, but every time I picked up my phone or sat down at my laptop, I'd find something new. Gavin and his family were ahead of me. They weren't just after my words, they were after my whole life. It started small. I logged into our joint bank account and saw transfers I hadn't made, money moving from our savings into an account I didn't recognize. Thousands gone. When I confronted Gavin, he acted calm, like I was overreacting. "It's just a reallocation," he said, smiling like I was too dumb to understand. A few days later, I got an email from my boss. HR wanted to discuss some complaints that had come in about my emotional instability. My stomach dropped. I'd been at that job for 6 years, never a single problem. But now suddenly people were questioning if I was fit to manage my team. I checked my social media and it was worse. Anonymous accounts spreading rumors, posts about how I was abusive and unfit to be around chill daughter, Naomi N. They were using the same phrases Gavin had used in the court papers. It was clear they were poisoning the well. And then it hit me. I had a camera in the living room. I bought it after a break-in scare the year before, but I'd stopped checking it regularly. I pulled up the footage. There they were. Margot in my house when I wasn't home, going through my Dr. Naomi hours. Lila sitting at my desk, looking through my laptop. Gavin standing by the door like a lookout. I watched it all, my hands shaking. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. They weren't just snooping. They were taking pictures of personal papers, documents, even old family photos. I realized they were building a case for court. I remembered the protective order. Gavin wasn't just trying to paint me as unstable. He was setting up for a custody battle. Even though we didn't have kids yet, I knew he wanted to destroy any chance I had at keeping my life. And then there was Dr. Naomi. Dr. Naomi. I tried to reach her. I called, left messages, even showed up at her office. Finally, she called me back, sounding shaken. She told me she'd been approached by Gavin and Margot, and they'd threatened to file a complaint against her for unethical conduct unless she supported their claims in court. They said she was biased, that she was helping me build a case against Gavin. She sounded scared, said she couldn't be involved. I realized I was alone, but I wasn't done. I went to a lawyer, Carmen, a friend from college who practiced family law. She listened quietly as I told her everything, then sat back and said, "This is a setup, classic gaslight strategy. But if you've got recordings, backups, evidence, we can turn this around." I showed her the video footage, the cloud files, the bank records. Her eyes widened. "This is criminal," she said. That night, I sat in my car outside Gavin's parents' house, watching as they laughed and clinked wine glasses like they'd already won. They thought they had me. They thought I was the weak one. But I was done being quiet. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I sat there in my car staring at them through the window, Gavin, Margot, and Lila. They were sitting at the dining table, laughing, clinking glasses, looking so damn pleased with themselves, like they'd already buried me, like I wasn't even a person anymore, just a problem they'd solved. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my hands started to hurt. I wasn't going to let them win. The next morning, I went back to my lawyer, Carmen, and told her everything. That's when she asked me a question that flipped the whole thing on its head. Do you think they've been doing this to other people? It was like a slap in the face. I hadn't even thought about that. I'd been so focused on my own hell, I didn't stop to wonder if I was just the latest target. I started digging. First, I looked up Gavin's ex-girlfriends. It wasn't easy, but with some old Facebook friends and Google searches, I found a few names. One of them, Jade, used to work at the same firm as Gavin before we even met. I reached out. Jade called me back that night, and when I told her what had been happening, she broke down. Aaron, she whispered. He did the same thing to me, almost word for word. She told me how Gavin and his family had painted her as unstable, how they'd sabotaged her job, spread rumors, even convinced her friends that she was dangerous. She left town to get away from it all. She'd never connected the dots, never thought it was all planned. But it didn't stop there. I found another woman, Alyssa, an old friend of Lila's from high school. Same story. Lila had helped spread lies about her, accused her of theft, and forced her out of her job at a daycare center. It was like I'd uncovered a pattern, a sick, twisted hobby for this family. I started a file. I collected everything: emails, text messages, screenshots, bank records, recordings. I printed it all out, organized it, labeled every single page. And then I got a letter. It was from Gavin's lawyer, a settlement offer. They wanted me to sign away my rights to everything: the house, the car, the joint savings. They offered me a small payout for my trouble and a confidentiality clause that would prevent me from ever talking about what happened. It was a trap. But the worst part, the letter included a fake confession. It was typed up, but it looked like a statement from me, saying I admitted to being emotionally unstable, that I agreed to leave the marriage quietly for the sake of everyone's well-being. They were trying to erase me. I felt like the walls were closing in. But that's when Carmen said, "They're getting sloppy. They're overconfident. And we're going to use that." That night, I decided I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to bring the whole rotten house down. I sent an anonymous tip to the state licensing board about Dr. Naomi being threatened by Gavin and his family. I didn't name names yet, just enough to open an investigation. I also reached out to a local reporter I knew from college, someone who specialized in investigative stories. I told him there was a pattern of women being targeted, manipulated, and silenced by a family in Charleston, and I had proof. And then the real twist hit me. One night, while reviewing the camera footage again just to make sure I hadn't missed anything, I noticed something in the background. When Margot was going through my Dr. Naomi hours, she wasn't just taking my journal. She had slipped a small flash Dr. Naomi Ive into her pocket. I didn't recognize it at first, but when I zoomed in on the footage, I realized it was my old backup, Dr. Naomi Ive, the one I thought I'd lost years ago. That Dr. Naomi Ive had everything: old emails, tax files, even some personal videos I'd never meant for anyone else to see. They had it. And I knew if I didn't stop them, they'd use it. I sat in my car, heart pounding, staring at the footage of Margot pocketing my old backup Dr. Naomi Ive. That Dr. Naomi Ive contained everything: personal emails, financial records, even intimate videos meant only for Gavin and me. The thought of them having access to it made my skin crawl. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted Carmen, my lawyer, and showed her the footage. She was appalled, but also saw an opportunity. "This is illegal," she said. "We can press charges for theft, invasion of privacy, and more." We filed a police report and submitted all the evidence we had. The authorities launched an investigation into Gavin and his family's actions. Meanwhile, I reached out to the women I had spoken to earlier, Jade and Alyssa, and asked if they'd be willing to share their stories. They agreed, and together we compiled a comprehensive report detailing the pattern of abuse and manipulation perpetrated by Gavin's family. We presented this report to the court, along with all the evidence we had gathered. The court proceedings were intense. Gavin's family tried to paint me as unstable, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge saw through their lies and ruled in my favor. Gavin and his family faced legal consequences for their actions. Margot was charged with theft and invasion of privacy. Lila faced charges for unauthorized recording and distribution of confidential therapy sessions. Gavin was found guilty of fraud and defamation. But the most satisfying part was seeing their reputation destroyed. The community turned against them, and they became pariahs in their own town. For me, I took time to heal and rebuild my life. I continued therapy, focused on my career, and surrounded myself with supportive friends. I also started a support group for women who had experienced similar abuse, helping them find their voice and seek justice. Looking back, I realized that while the pain was immense, it led me to discover my strength and resilience, and that was the ultimate revenge. Thriving, despite their efforts to destroy me. Years later, I received a letter from Lila. She apologized for her actions and explained that she had been manipulated by her family. She had cut ties with them and was seeking redemption. I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only give them more power over me. I had taken back control of my life, and no one could take that away from me again. When I saw that footage of Margot pocketing my old backup, Dr. Naomi Ive, I realized just how deep this mess went. They weren't just coming for my marriage. They were trying to erase me completely. My old emails, tax documents, private videos, everything I'd ever tried to keep safe. They had it all. Carmen and I knew we had to move fast. The next morning, we filed an emergency motion in court to stop Gavin's protective order and expose the theft. We included the camera footage, the emails, the journal pages, the recordings, everything. But Carmen had a bigger plan. "Let's go public," she said. I hesitated at first. This was my life, my pain. But then I thought about all the women they'd hurt. Jade, Alyssa, and probably others I didn't even know about. I thought about the lies they'd told, the way they'd tried to make me disappear. So I agreed. Carmen set up a press conference in front of the courthouse. I stood there shaking, holding a folder thick with evidence. The cameras were in my face, the microphones shoved at my mouth. I told my story, all of it. I talked about the journal, the secret recordings, the stolen backup Dr. Naomi Ive, the money siphoned from our account, the manipulation in therapy, the threats against Dr. Naomi, the women before me. I named names: Gavin, Margot, Lila. By the time I was done, the reporters were in shock. The fallout was fast. The local news ran the story that night. By morning, it had spread online. Articles, TV segments, social media. People in Charleston were furious. Gavin's business, he worked in real estate, lost clients overnight. Margot, who volunteered at several charities, was asked to step down from every single one. Lila's job at a private school gone within 48 hours. And the police, they showed up at Gavin's door with a search warrant. Turns out Margot didn't just have my Dr. Naomi Ive. She had a stash. Documents from other women, too. Old emails from Jade. Photos from Alyssa. Financial records from another ex of Gavin's. It was a goldmine of evidence. Gavin tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that he was just protecting himself. But the DA wasn't buying it. Gavin was charged with fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit defamation. Margot was hit with felony theft and invasion of privacy. Lila faced charges for illegal recording and distribution of confidential therapy files. Even Dr. Naomi came forward. She admitted she'd been intimidated and manipulated by them. She testified in my favor, and her story only made their lives fall apart faster. The civil court awarded me damages enough to pay off my legal bills, move into a new place, and start fresh. But the real satisfaction, Gavin was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Margot got 2 years probation and community service. Lila avoided jail but lost her job, her teaching license, and her reputation. And me? I took my pain and turned it into purpose. I started a podcast called The Undone, where I told my story and helped other women expose abuse and manipulation. I partnered with advocacy groups. I spoke at events. But I won't lie to you. Revenge didn't come without scars. I lost years of my life to Gavin's lies. I lost friends who believed his side at first. And yeah, I had moments when I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. But in the end, I walked away stronger. And Gavin? He lost everything. His career, his reputation, his freedom. The last time I saw him was in the courtroom, just before he was led away in cuffs. He tried to look at me like he still had the upper hand. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. He knew I won, and they'll never ever forget. Never ever forget.